Level up your LA Kings experience with Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access and rewards. Enjoy great seats to the game in Section 103 along with Yamava Club access and parking included with your purchase. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings shop item at the game. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn perks on each purchase from the only leading ticket company with a rewards program. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings. Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, it's playoff time. That means it's time to preview the upcoming playoff series between the LA Kings and the Colorado Avalanche. Here to help me do that, Jim Fox. How are you doing today, Jim?
Doing great, Jesse. Thanks very much for having me.
So we're recording this on this particular conversation Friday, 2 days before the series starts. And Jim, you've watched plenty of LA Kings playoff hockey in your day, as have I. I can't think of a season where the odds seemed stacked steeper against the Kings to begin a playoff series.
Yeah, the inability to get any consistency in their game until the very end. And that's what saved it. I'm sure there's a lot of different theories about what went wrong and what went right. But for me, the biggest turnaround was the obvious ones are Panarin, his effect, Byfield at the end, really turning it on. But to me, it was Anton Forsberg in goal that really solidified that position, at least at the end of the regular season. And by doing that, those three things coming together, I think it really helped everyone. Eighth spot. It's a tough spot right now, but it's better than ninth.
Yes, that is true. One of the sort of cheat codes that I've used over the years to try and anticipate who would make a playoff spot and who would not, few months into the season, month left in the season, was always goal differential.
Right.
And it's never 100% match, but it's usually pretty close. Teams with a positive goal differential make the playoffs. Teams with a negative goal differential don't. This year, the Avalanche lead the NHL with a 99 goal differential. The Kings are one of the few teams that have made a playoff spot with a negative goal differential.
Right.
Is that just a real simple overview to how good the Colorado Avalanche have been this year?
Yes, dominant. And most of the topics and categories we'll talk about today, Jesse, I think from the Kings' perspective, it's not to win those categories. It's just to hang around those categories. It's to not be dominated in those categories. Because we can go through the list of how they built up that goal differential. I mean, they're strong on the rush. They're strong on the cycle. They're strong everywhere. The only thing that really slips for Colorado is the power play, where the ranking is near the bottom. So that's the only thing. Offensive zone time, possession time, number one, all these things. So for the Kings, when you're looking at those, you just have to stay in the same neighborhood. You don't have to even win the categories. You just kind of have to hang around. And that's the way I look at it. I will say this. A positive I would take from the Kings standpoint is this: 5-on-5, they have a positive goal differential. Of course, the special teams really kick them in the butt, and that's where, it kills you.
That's funny. I thought you were going to then point to Colorado's 5v5 numbers because, of course, they also don't have a dynamite power play, which I suppose could be a side door into competitiveness in this series for the Kings.
It's one of those things where it always worries me this way, Jesse. And we've done it now 4 years in a row against Edmonton, who are right at the top. I always felt it's better to come into the playoffs where Colorado is, because you've gotten that far, and it really hasn't been a big part of your game. So for Colorado, it can only go up maybe. Whereas playing Edmonton, it can only go down. No, it never happened. They were clicking at 40% at sometimes. So that hurts you. But yeah, it is one of those categories where the Kings can hang around. Having said that, then you just flip it around, and the number one penalty kill in the league in the regular season is the Colorado Avalanche.
Now, over the last 4 years, our conversations about the playoffs have revolved around the Edmonton Oilers. And one of the conversations that you and I have had a number of times is that the Kings had to stop worrying about what the Oilers were doing, specifically McDavid and Draisaitl, and start making the Oilers worry about what the Kings were doing. So, okay, it's not the Oilers, but it's the Avalanche, and it's not McDavid and Draisaitl, but it's McKinnon and Makar, as well as a handful of other players. Is the conversation the same for you this year? Do the Kings have to not worry about what the McKinnons and Makars are doing?
It's not the same this year, Jesse, for this reason. And whether it can carry into the playoffs is the whole different story. You're not playing regular season games. Now you're playing every single game against the best team in the NHL. So that's where it's hard. But I do think since DJ Smith took over, the Kings were making the other team worry about themselves. The Kings were still checking, but they were countering. Transition offense was much better. Offensive zone time was much better. 5 men involved was much better. Were they juggernauts? No, but they were better than they have been in the past. Talking to Trevor Moore specifically, it used to be trap, trap, trap. Now it's check and go, and use your speed, read and react. So there is more of that, generally speaking, with the Kings right now than in any other time, I think, in the past few years. So that's something that you hope. Now, having said that, in the back of my mind, I'm hearing myself, you can't go track meet. There's no way you can go track meet. You cannot do that. So it has to be some type of balance, some type of an area. And again, categories that you can look at, special teams, just got to hang around. All those types of things, the 5-on-5, the zone entries. They're going to have the puck in the zone. Colorado's they're going to have pucks in the zone, offensive zone. They're going to lead every game, possession time. You just can't make it to the fact that, it's going to be so much that it becomes dominating. So that, we're back to that same thing but I think the Kings, at least in the regular season, appeared to be better prepared for making the other team worry about them a little bit.
Another hallmark of the DJ Smith era as head coach of the LA Kings is stability of the lines. 3 of the top 5 lines, as far as number of minutes played consistently, have come with DJ Smith as a head coach. With players like Fiala and Kuzmenko out and potentially more, I don't have an update on Malott or anything like that, but as a player, would you rather go with the team that put together that 5-game win streak, or would you rather, try and work injured guys back into the lineup at the most stressful time of the year?
Yeah, I lean towards staying with what was working. And yes, you have some guys there. Now, again, if Fiala jumped through a magic machine and all of a sudden was ready, that's a whole different story. Kuzmenko is interesting because he does bring that quick strike capability, but if there's anything we have learned from DJ Smith, it's the use of all those players you're talking about. He didn't shorten the bench a lot, certainly not as much as the Kings did in the playoffs last year, not even close to that. He did keep the lines together, so there is a continuity there. 3 things to me stand out as far as four players. 4 players that stand out. And I'm going to call 3 of them newcomers, and 1 guy's been here. The 3 newcomers, Panarin. Okay, he can help limit that differential in offensive zone possession time because he does a pretty good job himself. So they need him there. Scott Laughton, coming aboard, winning faceoffs. You talk about possession time. Well, what happens if the Kings go 1 game and win 75% of the faceoffs? Now they're going to have the puck, which means Colorado doesn't, at least to start. So that helps you get there. The other new guy I'm going to call, it's Brandt Clarke, because last year he was not a factor. He wasn't used. Now he is a factor. Now he can hold on to the puck. Now he can gain offensive zone entries. And then the fourth guy, he's not the newcomer. It's Quentin Byfield. If there's any, my hopes are this, and again, we all know the Kings are huge underdogs here. Huge underdogs. I'll just say this. I played on a team that beat a team that finished 50-some points ahead of us in the regular season. So it was a 5-game series, not a 7-game series, all those things, but it can happen. But the Kings are huge underdogs. But what I'm looking for from Quentin Byfield is to do what Adrian Kempe did 5 years ago. And that was first playoff series there against the Edmonton Oilers, where Adrian Kempe became a big boy, as DJ Smith likes to say. He learned how to play hard playoff hockey and still play with skill. What we've seen from QB at the end of the regular season is skill with production, which we hadn't seen consistently all year long. I go back to a quote after one of the recent games at Crypto.com where Adrian Kempe said, Quentin Byfield's playing great. We need him to continue to do that. He is that good. We need him to do that. He said, I know there is pressure. And I think he was trying to let QB know, I'm going to try to help you through this. I'm going to try to take you under my wing a little bit, because he went through that 5 years ago where, came into the league, right? Wasn't productive. Took him a while, then blossomed. We've got to hope that happens this year with QB.
Let's talk about Artemi Panarin for a second. The phrase game breaker gets used a lot, and I've never really I'm not sure I know what it means necessarily in a vacuum, but in my mind, what I hear when people say game breaker is a guy who can, if need be, create offense by himself. Just by sheer virtue of his talent and his ability can generate a goal for you that maybe wasn't there for you to have. Mm-hmm. As you said, you've played on playoff teams that beat, quote unquote, better teams on paper. How valuable is it to have a guy who can legitimately just generate a goal or a chance out of nowhere?
I think the value, Jesse, is there hopefully in production, but just in knowing that you now have that type of player. That in the back of your mind as a team, as a group, just knowing that, okay, if for whatever reason the Kings can keep it 2-1, 3-2 at the end, and Panarin's able to make a play. Like you say, just, that play that maybe changes the game, maybe decides the game all by himself. Game break, Panarin's speed is not there. He's not going to all of a sudden, but he does it with right here, right? And making the moves and doing all that stuff. So that's an element that the Kings probably haven't had before. I mean, Fiala's in that category where, he can grind you, he can spin, he can do all, but the use of other players around him, like you're saying, I think that's where Panarin excels and hopefully can continue to do so in the playoffs.
Last thing I want to talk to you about before we let you go, Jim, is the concept of pressure. Because every playoff series, there's pressure, right? Because if you lose the series, that's it, your season's done. But for example, Minnesota versus Dallas, I imagine every second of every shift of every game is loaded with pressure, right? Because those two teams are very, very good. In the Kings against Colorado series, I feel like pressure can be weaponized. And so this thought I had that occurred to me, and I want to see if you think I'm totally crazy for thinking this. I think the first team to reach 2 wins in the series kind of controls the pressure. If the Kings can somehow get out to a 2-1 lead over Colorado, that's house money. And all of a sudden, Colorado is under pressure. Whereas if Colorado gets to a 2-1 lead over the Kings, well, that's because of everything we've said about the Kings being underdogs. That's somewhat to be expected. Colorado can't wield pressure, I don't think, until the dying moments of an elimination game.
Nothing to lose. The Kings played a lot of games at the end of the regular season against teams that had nothing to lose. And, Vancouver ended up winning and Calgary ended up winning. They had nothing to lose, those types of things. So, pressure is all on Colorado. They know that. We know that. Everyone knows that because really the Kings have nothing to lose. I mean, in the 12 hours since the end of the regular season, or 14 hours,
Yeah.
whatever it's been. I mean, I've listened, I've read, I've taught, and I don't blame the people, the prognosticators. I don't blame them for saying what they're saying. But by far, they are giving the Kings the smallest chance of winning this playoff series compared to any other one. Even where other series where there's some favorites, it's not the biggest gap. So back to that, nothing to lose. That's what happened. The Kings, I mean, I was hoping for Anaheim Kings. Who wasn't, right? Southern California, a younger Anaheim team, skilled team, no question, but younger. Stanley Cup winning coach, though, so that helps that thing. But now you get, what you have right in front of you right now, and that is a dominant regular season team. If it happens, great. 2012, the Kings got in at 8th, and they went on to win. I don't see the same roster makeup, in my opinion, of the Kings right now as it was back in 2012. But pressure, and then, like every single playoff series. But in this one, I assume it would have to be Anton Forsberg, but if it's Darcy Kemper later on, whatever, the Kings goalies will have to steal at least 2 games. Steal, meaning outshot 40-23, possessed offensive zone, double, triple, and still win the game. And that's where hockey has that. You're telling me there's a chance?
Right.
Because it's the only, soccer has a goalie, but it's such a low scoring game that a goalie might make 5 saves in a game, and that's great but basketball doesn't have goalie, baseball doesn't have a goalie, football doesn't have a goalie, and hockey does. And that's where get at least 2 steals. You got a chance.
You mentioned the 2012 team, and obviously there are tons of parallels. People keep bringing it up, and I sort of roll my eyes when it gets brought up. And yet I was way less confident heading into that series against Vancouver, who was also the President's Trophy winner, than I am about this series. I thought there was no chance. I was.
Yeah, I had a different feeling. And again, I was on the record. I said if the Kings win the Stanley Cup, I would not be surprised. And that was before the season started. So I had a better feel for that roster. If it happened this year, great. But to me, it would be 5 times harder than that Vancouver series.
Well, hopefully it goes our way, and hopefully we're having this conversation again in a few weeks previewing the second round series. All right, Jim Fox, thank you for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse.
Joining us now from the 4th period, Dave Pagnotta. How are you doing today, Dave?
I'm great, Jesse. Like, playoff hockey, how can you not be feeling all amped up and ready to go?
Yeah, and honestly, my first thought when I saw the early start time for game 1 was a little bit of trepidation, but the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, yeah, let's get to it. Let's get these playoffs underway.
Right.
We're obviously talking about Kings versus Avalanche in the first round. And Dave, I've got a pretty solid belief that whenever everybody agrees on something, and I mean everybody agrees, it's usually wrong. Like, that's one of the reasons I don't get mad about flat earth people is I'm like, right, okay, fine. It's 99.999%. But you got to have that one sort of crackpot group of people who believe the wrong thing.
Right.
And then, you're solid. But I have not yet seen a single credible national coverage type person without a bias pick the Kings to upset Colorado in the first round.
Right. Unfortunately, I follow that pattern.
Yeah.
They're so good. Like, Colorado is they're so good. They're so deep. The goaltending has been fantastic this season. You've got the Rocket Richard winner in Nathan McKinnon, who was almost 130 points this year, came just shy of that. You have Martin Necas, who popped in 100 points himself. You have Cale Makar, one of the best defensemen in the league. You've got quality depth pieces up and down this lineup. This is a very, very hard task for anybody. That would have. If it was Anaheim, I'm picking Colorado. If it was Edmonton, I'm picking Colorado. If it was Utah, I'm picking Colorado. Like whoever, any of the potential matchups, the Avs were going ahead for me. And this isn't, and I think the consensus across the board is, not a slight against the LA Kings. It's just, holy cow, the Colorado Avalanche are just that good.
Yeah, and I mean they clearly are, right? They're the President's Trophy winner. They've got an unbelievable, goal differential, the most goals, fewest goals against, et cetera, et cetera. But you
Right.
mentioned the goaltending, and if you had said to me before the season started that the best team in the league by far would have Wedgwood and Blackwood as their goalies,
Yeah.
I don't think I would have believed you. I mean, no, it's not true.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't have believed you. Never mind.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't believe you. I know that I would not have believed you at all.
And yeah, I mean, I did not have, Wedgwood with a goals against just over 2
Yeah.
on my bingo card this season. No chance. I was looking at Sorokin out of the playoffs. I was looking at Hellebuck out of the playoffs. I was looking at Vasilevsky's a different beast, but I'm looking at guys. Shesterkin last in the East. I didn't anticipate Colorado with their tandem of Blackwood and Wedgwood. And by the way, everyone was pointing at the start of the season that it was going to be Blackwood's net, and that Wedgwood would just come in and probably play 30 games and be serviceable. And he was ridiculous this year. A big reason why they were so good for so long. And when you're riding that high, and you've got some of the other best players in the world with Makar and McKinnon and so on, and then you had Natchez in the mix, as I mentioned. You have Landeskog, who was back this season, story in his own right. Brock Nelson, who is probably going to be a Selke finalist this season, with how strong his performance has been. You have Nazem Kadri added to the mix ahead of the trade deadline. They have so many ways to bite you and burn you. And then they just happen to have the best tandem in the league. The second time that franchise has ever won the Jennings Trophy for best goals against. Patrick Waugh did it. He was the last one to do it for them. This time they combo it. Again, this is just a dangerous, potent team that any of their potential matchups in that first round going into the last 2 weeks of the season, again, it wouldn't have mattered to me.
But if I am an opponent, and let's just pretend that I am the LA Kings for a second, if I have to find a weak point to attack, on the Avs, in my mind, it has to be the fact that they don't really have a number one goaltender. They have a tandem, both of whom have performed incredibly well. But can you not just try and apply pressure to that situation and hope that they mishandle it? Because, I mean, how many times in history have we seen the better team mishandle their goalie rotation and then lose a series because of it?
You're going to have to apply a ton of pressure in front of that crease. You're going to have to get, 2012 Kings-esque and create a lot of havoc in that crease. Not be afraid to crash the net. Not be afraid to bang shots. Go into the dirty areas as often as you can, and just tick off whoever's in net. And hope your penalty kill can sustain what will inevitably be a few power plays going Colorado's way because of it. You have to get under the goalie's skin as much as you can in order to chip away at the armor that's there in their crease. I agree with you. I think that if there's a plan of attack, it's doing that. And whether that's, utilizing Scott Lawton a little bit more, because he's not afraid to go into those areas, so be it. If you have to juggle things a little bit situationally as the game progresses, you're going to have to do that. You don't have Corey Perry. He's in Tampa. You need somebody to be able to step in and do that kind of stuff. Lots can probably do that for you. You're going to have to find a couple other guys that are going to have to do that for you as well, up and down this lineup. And you got that line covered, but now you got to find out, okay, who's the guy on the top line? Are you keeping Panarin, Kopi, and Kempe together? If you are, then you're probably going to have to plan things a little bit differently. But if you're going to jumble things a little bit, who's going to be that guy going to the crease? Who's going to do it on Q's line, right? Like it's not simple where you've got a guy on every one of those lines that can do that. But when the opportunity arises, you're going to have to figure out a way to get under the goalie's skin here, whether it's Blackwood or Wedgwood. It really doesn't matter.
We talked to Jim Fox about this series, and I mentioned Artemi Panarin as being the Kings' only game breaker, by my definition of game breaker, which is somebody who can create an offensive chance out of nothing, someone who can just generate points out of thin air. The Avs have a few of their own. How important is it for the Kings to try and win the battle of the game breakers? Like, how much energy and effort do you put into stopping their game breakers to try and give space to your own?
Well, and this is where, and I don't know if it'll be off the bat or if this will start to change as the series progresses, but this is where you may have to start spreading things around, because you're going to want to have Kopitar's defensive capabilities matching up presumably against Nathan McKinnon. You're going to want to try to shut down their best offensive force by using one of your best weapons. And if that's the case, then how's that going to affect, again, if Kempe and Panarin are on that line, how's that going to affect their performance? Because you're basically going to be, whatever Kopi's line is, if it's going against McKinnon, you're almost canceling out consistent offensive opportunities for your club. So you may have to jumble things a little bit. You may have to shake things up. And this, again, may be something that just happens as the season kind of progresses. But, that might be, part of the way to go. Now, conversely, and I mean, obviously, home advantages on Colorado's side here with final change. So you're going to have to, again, do this. And this is what I mean situationally. You're going to have to kind of do this on the fly in certain moments. At the very least 2 games, at most 4. But it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of works in or potentially becomes something that works in LA's favor. Now, at the same time, again, Brock Nelson his line can kind of be utilized, or if they're spreading out Kadri a little bit, like one of those guys can be utilized to go up against LA's top opponent, or because you have those 2 guys that you can split up. One guy goes after one line, one guy goes after the other line, and you're basically relying on your third line to create offense. So it's almost a monumental task that's being faced here. But again, this isn't a problem exclusive to LA. It would have been the same thing for Anaheim. It would have been the same thing for just about anybody that could have potentially been matched up against this team in round 1.
Let's talk about coaching real quick, and then we'll get you on to your evening. The Avalanche have a coach who's won championships at the ECHL, AHL, and NHL level. The Kings have a coach who's won a major juniors, but has never coached a playoff game in the NHL as a head coach. What kind of advantage does that give Colorado?
Well, I mean, look, experience works in favor of, almost always in favor of those who have it. So, you're going to lean on that. Certainly Colorado's going to lean on past experiences and past success to try to replicate that and go from there. They know what's worked before. They know what hasn't. This is a team in Colorado that's lost before they won, and very passionately lost. And we saw a lot of emotion come out of them before they got over the hump. And you're not just taking that from the coach. You're taking that from some of the guys that have been there, like Nate McKinnon, who was very vocal in a year in which they should have won, or at least based on the regular season should have won, but didn't. So without question, Bednar is going to be counted on for his experience in how to combat whatever's coming at them. So what the Kings have been able to do since their coaching change, and then maintain that performance. Now, a lot of that also has to deal with, we've talked about goaltending and how strong it's been on Colorado's side. Well, Anton Forsberg in the last 2 weeks of the season's probably the reason this team is in the playoffs. Momentum goes a long way and confidence goes a long way. You're going to be riding that as much as you can. And I've got to think the team's pretty confident in him in net when he's in there. So that's one element that DJ Smith doesn't have to, at least in the beginning, won't have to necessarily overthink or overanalyze. This is what's worked. You got to ride them. And now it's trying to match up things, and you're not going to gain that experience until you play these games in the playoffs. Game 83 and on, as we all know, totally different beast in the first 82. But you've got Drew, you've got Kopi, and you've got others around this club on the bench as well, Matt Green, that have been there and battled through it, and they can lend that experience to the other guys. And hopefully they listen, they harness it, they succeed as well.
Dave Pagnotta, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And we're going to let you get back to your day.
You got it. Thank you. Enjoy these playoffs.